Sarah Van Buren, and I'm the Director of Business Intelligence here at Envision Greater Fond du Lac, and today I want to talk to you about the changing demographics of Fond du Lac County and how they're shaping our future. Counting every person was especially hard during the COVID-19 pandemic for the 2020 census. However, the data collected was very insightful and gave us three main trends that came out of it. We are growing, we are aging, and we're becoming more diverse. We're going to take a few moments to dive deeper into each of these topics. First, Fond du Lac County is growing, but it's not growing as fast as the state or the nation as a whole. Between 2000 and 2020, the county's population only grew about 7%. For comparison purposes, the state grew at 10% and the nation grew at 18%. Our population as of the 2020 census was up to 104,355 people. That basically equates to about a 0.3% annual growth rate between that 20-year period. During that 20-year period, we grew 18 of those 20 years. According to the Wisconsin Department of Administration's population projections, we are growing, and by 2030, we are projected to be at 110,590 people. But I want you to keep in mind 2030 is a magical decade in the demographic years to come. Because starting in that decade, our population is going to decline and grow at a much slower rate than in previous years. So what is contributing to a declining population? In order to really understand that, you need to understand the components of population change, which are natural increases and migration. To determine natural increases, you take the amount of births and subtract out the amount of deaths. And then for migration, you take the amount of in-migration and subtract out out-migration. So this is from the Department of Workforce Development here at the state from 2010 to 2020. As you can see, most of our growth, not only at the county, but also nationally, has been through net migration. And Wisconsin as a whole, as you can see, they actually grew more through natural increases. So for the people that are coming and going from Fond du Lac County, where are they coming and going? Where are they coming from and where are they going to? So in general, like our neighboring counties, most families leaving went to neighboring states that had warmer climates and had better income taxes. Among youth, they're moving to states that have much larger cities. For those people that stayed within the state of Wisconsin when they moved, they're moving to places in Winnebago County, Ozaukee County, as well as La Crosse County. Nationally, we're getting most of our new residents from other states, such as New Mexico and Arizona and southern Florida. The next trend that we saw in the 2020 census was regarding aging, and that we are an aging population. And this trend is not unique to us. It's actually something that is occurring globally, but at much different rates. So this is just a bar chart that shows you in age brackets what the populations were in 2010 and 2020. As you can see in the blue graph, which is 2010 data, that we had the younger population was about 26%. There's a slight dip, but then it goes up again, and then there's a slight dip in the older ages. But as you can see in 2020, the older populations are starting to increase, and actually the 50-year-old group and up, they're the ones that grew the fastest during that 10-year time period. And this pattern is actually expected to continue for years to come. As you can see by some population projections, by 2027, about 72% of Fond du Lac County's population will be over the age of 25, and of that, 47.5% of them will actually be above the age of 45. Remember in a previous slide I talked about 2030 being a magical year for demography. Well, that's because by 2030, every single baby boomer in our country will be above the age of 65. And for the first time in our nation's history, by 2030, we will have more people over the age of 65 than we will below the age of 18. Another way of showing age distribution is through something called a population pyramid. And in a perfect world, a population pyramid, you have the younger ages at the bottom, the older ages at the top, and you have males and females split out on either side. In the perfect world, you want to see the base of your pyramid be really big and strong and slightly come to a smaller peak towards the top. However, this is a population pyramid that shows what it is in 2020 and what it's projected to be in 2040. And as you can see by the hash lines for 2040, our population pyramid is becoming extremely top heavy. Another way of demonstrating that we have an aging population is that our average age is actually increasing. In 2030, it was almost 37 years of age, and by 2020, it was almost 42 years of age, and by 2027, Fond du Lac County's average age is expected to be 43. Even though we have a lot of conversation going on right now regarding attraction and retention in our labor market, one thing we need to realize is that an aging population has been impacting the labor market well before the pandemic. Even though you're hearing a lot of talk about how the pandemic has really impacted it, it's actually been occurring for decades prior to the pandemic. For Fond du Lac County, as you can see, labor force participation rate has been decreasing since 2000. So labor force participation measures the amount of non-institutionalized individuals 16 years and older that are employed or actively looking for employment. So in 2000, you start to see the dip in the labor force participation rate. That's because the oldest of the baby boomer generation was nearing the end of their peak work years. A peak work years are considered between the ages of 25 and 55. And so as you have an aging population and you don't have as many younger generations coming up, that labor force participation rate starts to dip. And unfortunately, this is a trend that is anticipated to continue for decades to come. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is actually predicting that the decline will slow for labor force participation rate, maybe declining about 1% over the next decade. In comparison, in Fond du Lac County, we decreased 1% just between 2019 and 2020. So the labor force participation rate will decline, but at a much slower rate. And they're anticipating it's because with an aging population and advances in medical technology, you have a longer life expectancy now of people. So they're having to stay in the workforce longer because of the fact that they're living longer, but also because of changes to things like the Social Security system and pension systems, people are having to stay in the workforce longer. So they anticipate it will still decline, but not as quickly as it has been. For some context, in 2020, the labor force participation rate for Fond du Lac County was 67.3%, and in 2021, it was about the same rate. The last thing that came out of the 2020 census is that we are becoming more culturally and ethnically diverse. In 2020, the white non-Hispanic population group still made up a majority of the population within Fond du Lac County. It was 95.1% in 2000, and it's down to 86.6% in the 2020 census. However, there have been a rise in the minority populations. Between 2000 and 2020, the Hispanic share of the population grew 4.4% to now account for 6.4% of our county population. Also, the Black population in the county grew about 90%, specifically between 2010 and 2020, and they now account for 2.2% of our county's population. When you have a more ethnically and racially diverse county or community as a whole, you need to take into account that it has an impact on the services that we offer, as well as the needs that they present within a work environment. And one of those is commonly seen is language is spoken at home. For those residents in Fond du Lac County over the age of 5 that identified as speaking a language other than English at home, as you can see in the pie graph, 64% of those people identified as speaking Spanish within their homes. So what does this mean? I'm going to give you an example. Earlier this summer, the economic development team was out on some business retention and expansion visits, and we were continuously hearing from manufacturers in the county that they're having difficulty finding and retaining employees, but they also recognize the need for tapping into minority populations to fill their workforce needs. However, they run into the barriers specifically around language and how to break into those communities to even make them aware of the opportunities that they offer. And so knowing this, it forces the community to think of ways of how can we provide language interpretation services to our business community, but also even to our educational community as well. So to conclude, as you can see, our population is changing fast and information is key. We can't make informed decisions that support our businesses, our neighborhoods, and the broader economy without data. So hopefully the information that I talked about today will help you and your customers thrive in Fond du Lac County. For more information on this topic or other services offered by Envision Greater Fond du Lac, please visit envisiongraterfdl.com.